I pressed play on this video on somebody else's Facebook feed, and I was wondering exactly what this was about. Was it some sort of music related video? Was it something that was one of those cringy SJW things? But it actually turned out to be a pretty good discussion that this person, Aisha Canby, was having. So I want you guys to have a listen. And I actually want a lot of comments on this if you guys would oblige. So here we go.
This has robbed many people of compassion and replaced it with moral superiority. Compassion and empathy is paramount to any social movement and to any form of progress. Once you have compassion and empathy, you can often see that you have a lot more in common with people than you do apart. And it's the system under which we live in that forcefully tries to group us on our differences. What is radical is kindness. What is radical is understanding. That's the one thing they don't want us to do, is to understand each other. Arguing with each other isn't actually radical at all. It's very conformist, actually. I do think that wokeness does.
So she's actually saying a lot of her lines over shots and footage from Do the Right Thing, which is one of the better movies of the late 80s, with obviously you see Spike Lee there, but also Samuel L. Jackson, and another Danny Aiello was in it, and John Turturro. Who else? A bunch of other people. Very good movie, and this is a apt analogy because that movie was a lot about how there's a lot of friction between people and people representing for their quote-unquote community, and nothing actually positive would come of that. It would be the Italians fighting with the blacks, and the Puerto Ricans fighting with the Koreans, and the Jews fighting with the blacks, and all that type of stuff. So that was really what that movie was about.
Run the risk sometimes in reducing very complex issues. Wokeness tends to be quite reactionary instead of responsive. And so when you react, you go off of emotion and you go off of anger, resentment, humiliation. And that doesn't necessarily leave much space for nuance. And nuance is important in order to understand the interconnectedness of the issues. A lot of us are seeing.
So she's not actually discussing anything in terms of who's to blame or anything. She's saying that the idea of wokeness is I remember when I started to hear that word, I was still in college. I was probably in the last year of my master's degree in grad school, and I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But simply put, this is my description of wokeness. Wokeness means culturally aware of all of the elements of oppression that affect the world and the system that we live in. That's according to the people that promote it. And what she's trying to say is that instead of creating an environment where people will actually do something to address all those issues, what wokeness really is just lashing out without any focus or deeper thought at any of these things, and in the end just making the problem worse.
People who remind us of our former selves, and we're attacking that. It's hard for me to completely condemn someone as problematic because of behaviors that I don't agree with. I only know what I know and have the insight that I have because I have made a lot of mistakes, and I interrogate those mistakes. And I'm not necessarily looking for moral purity, but I'm looking for people who are committed to wanting to be better. There's a big element of shaming people. I look at Twitter and I look at a lot of the online spaces and conversations, and it's just a digital version of the school canteen. People choosing who they're going to sit with and who can't sit with us and who can speak on this and who can't speak on this. And this is completely not the goal of any social justice movement. I think what we're doing now is seeing people for their groups: white man, gay woman, black woman. We're talking about what we are rather than who we are. If someone is talking about race and a white person intercepts and are met with maybe defense or are met with a slur of some form, that is going to reinforce what they believe of that black person. And that black person is going to cement further their belief about what they think about white people. We're just confirming previous biases, and I think it can just be a place where it can quite easily make people feel as if they are not smart enough. Identity politics exists.
So, yeah, I think I shouldn't have paused it on this line, but basically what she is outlining is the fact that rather than bring together society, create a more cohesive society, social justice, politics, wokeness, all of that, it has, in reality, it's just widened the gulfs between different communities. You don't really feel more connected to people that are different than you. You actually start to the differences just seem more stark, and at every turn you begin to just even sharpen those and make them more and more imposing. So whereas at the beginning, before you became, so to speak, woke, you would notice differences between different racial, ethnic, sexual, age, religious groups. Now, instead of just differences, that could be challenging, they actually appear to be threats. Okay, so it makes a problem. It makes something that's it's an honest problem. People of different backgrounds tend to have issues getting along together, but it just aggravates the problem.
Exist because everyone wants to feel like they matter, but sometimes identity politics can run the risk of playing what they call the oppression Olympics, and who has it worse off and who suffered most. And if you have privilege, that means your life has been inherently good, which is very oversimplified notions of anyone's existence, which are not true. I think if people were more honest about their feelings as opposed to their political opinions, we would see that we have more in common than we do apart. Once that is achieved, then we can focus on our common oppressions. Because although we are all different, we are black women, we are white men, we are gay people, we are lesbians, we are trans, underneath the anger, the depression, the stress, the race conversations and the gender issues is that we feel a great big void. Labels are helpful in helping us understand each other, in finding communities, but I think at some stage we should be able to do away with labels. A man and a woman takes many forms, a black person takes many forms, whiteness takes many forms, and there is no one way to do it. One thing that wokeness has done is to arm me with a community of people who care about what I care about. However, I always want to be accountable. For me to outsource all of my issues to solve white supremacy is to give it too much power. And for me to outsource all of my issues as a woman to men is a little bit too disempowered for me. Just as much as women are oppressed by patriarchy, men are oppressed by patriarchy, and I can't not see that. I'm always skeptical that I don't want what I'm saying to come across as those Generation X baby boomers who are talking about wokeness in a very critical way because they are sad that they no longer have their time when they could say things with impunity and where they could be racist and make homophobic jokes. That's not it. I'm just asking for us to be more honest with ourselves, to think about why these issues are happening and to not be so reactionary, to be responsive and to be critical. Maybe in Wokeness 2.0, which is the second stage of the anger. In this new stage, the focus is a lot more inward. Once you understand yourself, it's very easy to understand everyone else. So easy, because we're actually not that different. We're actually painfully quite ordinary. How our ordinariness and our traumas and our pain manifests is very different, but the root cause as to why we act in the ways that we act often is insecurity. We want belonging, we want acceptance, fundamental things to a human. If we are more understanding of at least ourselves, it's so hard to judge other people.
Okay, so I like that she actually, I don't know who produced this, but whoever it was, they superimposed a lot of very good analogies. You saw the Joyner Lucas video, which I think is very the one with the black guy with the braids, and then the fat white guy with the "Make America Great Again" hat and everything. So those are and then there's the Matrix and a couple of those movies that were in there I didn't really recognize. But the issue that I think is going on here is that there are still people who, notwithstanding the woke crowd and notwithstanding the social justice movement, they are starting to move away from that and realize exactly how toxic it has become. Last week they were talking about Alyssa Milano, who I still don't really respect that much, but I guess she, you have to give her credit that she stood apart, said that she doesn't like the Women's March. I think today she actually renounced Michael Avenatti, who, by the way, called into my friend Anthony Logan's show. And they also, these people, like the woman in the video, who, by the way, she doesn't look exactly like somebody, but she really reminds me of somebody I went to school with who was also kind of like short, black, butch lesbian. But and it was a pretty nice, I remember I went to school with her for 2 years. I think I graduated a year before her. But and she didn't have a British accent like the woman in the video either. But yeah, this issue with identity politics and the tension that it causes between different subgroups is alienating people of even my generation, which technically we're full millennials, just like the rest of the millennial generation. But I remember, for example, the Pearl Jam type liberals, the type of liberals that were anti-war under President Bush, the ones that, for example, followed the Dixie Chicks. They weren't exactly like these uh, people today, the ones that are the identity left, the identitarian, race mongers that are going around right now and talking about how we need to abolish ICE and that there's, open borders and everything. No, there used to be, and I think that there will continue to be, in to some extent or another, people who are progressive in their outlook, but they don't want to force their values on other people. But they are the minority of the progressive movement. They're also a very powerless minority because they're not able. Think about it this way, okay? I watched this video. I kind of I found it. Those types of values that she's talking about don't exactly line up with mine because I don't think that they're exact. She's talking about things in a very empathetic way, but it's not very practical. The only way I believe that people are able to connect with one another is if you're able to appeal either to their guilt or to their self-interest. Okay, and appealing to someone's guilt is one of the ways that social justice has been working. Okay, and some people would say, well, it's not really their guilt; it's their compassion. That's the difference in perspective between somebody who's somebody like me, free market perspective, individualist, and everything, and some of these like more moderate liberals, like the person in the video, Aisha Akanbi. I don't know if I pronounced her name right, but I think that her perspective is something that I really looked at as being pretty normal back in my day. In fact, you could say that back in high school, I probably thought a lot like her. And it's not as if there isn't any validity to what she's talking about. But the reason that it's not succeeding to the degree that militant social justice is succeeding is because the militant people, the cultural Marxism. I have a friend who objects to me saying cultural Marxism, so I'm going to say cultural Marxism one more time. But okay, so social justice politics, identity politics. Why does it succeed so much? Because it's much easier to unite people against a common enemy, against a real goal that you want to eliminate. Even if the goal is kind of it can't even be defined. They're trying to eliminate hate, eliminate racism, eliminate bigotry. Well, how can you do that? Let's say, of course, I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The person that's most identified with hate and bigotry nowadays is President Trump. Let's say Trump dropped dead tomorrow from a tumor or something that nobody knew about. Let's say he had a stroke, or let's say Donald Trump said tomorrow, fuck it, I'm going home. Who needs this bullshit? Okay, do you think that these people would suddenly say, well, I guess we I guess we showed him. It's time to go. It's time to go home ourselves. No, social justice movements and the like, they are basically aimless mobs that end up being they generate totalitarian tendencies in society. Okay, they generate cults. Okay, you look at some of these cults from the 70s. What did they develop out of? Well, those are elements, these communal cults like the Jonestown cult, which is very much in line with Marxist thinking. That came out of the 60s. That came out of the free love, libertarian, socialist anarchism of the 60s. So that type of hippie love one another type philosophy is exactly what she was talking about in the video. Maybe not exactly, but very close to. A lot of talk about compassion and at the time it was called Aquarianism and and things like that. And in her case, it's a little less abstract and esoteric, but still they're talking about compassion a lot, about um, empathy and things like that. Those types of things do not succeed because they don't have a common enemy. They're trying to unite and empower people through positive vibes, which although they might be good and more you know constructive, they still don't elicit passion. Obviously, people have a fight or flight what do you call it? Fight or flight reaction to certain stimuli, and that's a more powerful reaction than the one that elicits compassion. So I hope I didn't really butcher this review of this video, but I thought it was very interesting. I saw it and I was like, yeah, this is a very interesting video. I think she says a lot of things that are oddly enough, you don't hear them enough today. But I still think that it's going to be very difficult for people like that to make a breakthrough. And also, I don't entirely see everything she's talking about as being true. But anyway, please like this video, share this video. Also, subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. Subscribe to this channel and comment. Please really comment on this video. And please tip me at the Patreon below. And I'll talk to you guys later.